What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols, sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. I am Mike. With me, we have Kev, Josh, Liz, Laura, Ellen, Steve, Justin. The gang is all here. We are going to do a recap show, looking back on 2021, peeking ahead a little bit to 2022, make some predictions. It's our annual, roundup show. So, you know, let's just go around the horn real quick and say hello, Justin. It's been a while since we've chatted. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I got real sad about playoff soccer last night after going to the Philadelphia Union's playoff game against Nashville. Although it was fun, ribbing their fans about maybe they should head back to the USL at some point in time. But it was a good experience. But it really made me real sad about the Riverhounds.
Yeah, I still don't think I fully processed that. We just didn't play a game. I feel like I should have by now, but it's still just it's still kind of there. Laura Allen, what's obviously you live in the same house as Justin, but what's new with you?
Well, I got some new plants, which you can kind of see behind me. Well, I brought my outdoor plants inside because it's cold now. I did not go to the Philadelphia Union game because it's cold outside, and I prefer to stay warm inside. But I think denial is a really helpful mechanism for dealing with tragedy in our lives, at least in the short term. So that's how I've been approaching things.
That's fair. Steve, I don't think I've talked to you in person. Congrats, man. You got a house, didn't you?
Yeah, bought my first house finally. I kind of got to a point where I was just like, I've been delaying this decision year after year, kind of like, oh, I'll wait until I figure out what I'm doing with my life. And I realized I'm doing with my life what I'm doing with my life. I might as well look around. So I was looking around. Things just didn't seem right. And then this house came on the market. It was a 5-block move from my apartment. So I walked by with the dog. Was like, yeah, this looks like a nice little house. Went and visited the next day, put an offer in, and the seller accepted the offer within 6.5 hours of when I did the visit to tour the house. So things went really smoothly in the process. I've got my own actual office now, so I'm not in the living room, which is kind of cool. So you see all my soccer scarves and whatnot in the background. I actually have a place to put them now. Yeah, it's exciting. The backyard's awesome. Rory is having a blast out there. His dog friends come over and they wrestle in the backyard for hours. So it's been a really good decision. It's been it's 2 weeks tomorrow, so it's still really new.
That's awesome. Congrats, man. That's really,
Thanks.
really cool. Yeah, happy for you. Liz, you were dancing when you joined. I'm sure it's because you were so excited to see all of us, right? That's why? Oh, we can't hear you, Liz. I don't know if your mic's on or not. I know. I'm sorry. We're going to blame Josh for that. We'll come back to you. Hi, Kev.
Wow. Everyone else gets so good to see you. So great to hear. I'm doing great, Mike. How are you? By the way, we're fine. This is just how we interact with each other. There's no tension between us.
No, we're good. No, there's legit no tension. We just talked. Yeah. We actually talked more this past week than we have in a long time. It was 2 or 3 times, which is great. So yeah. I'm good. I got you might be able to see my $1 hound scarf that I got from the salvage place out here in Mount Pleasant, which is fantastic. Susan was looking for a end table or something, and I just saw it laying there. So yeah, I said that's coming home with me. Liz, are you guys back?
Maybe.
Yeah, you are.
Right. It's happening. Now I'm dancing because you all get to hear me.
What's been new with you, Liz?
I've moved on to cooking, and we do Thanksgiving. I did a full Thanksgiving spread, which is my happy place. I have a schedule. I can do it all. And then we'll get some cookies in, and we're going to PAX Unplugged in 2 weeks. So it's a board game convention. I'm focused on other things. I've moved on with my life.
But the championship was just yesterday. How could you move on so? I'm just kidding.
We weren't in it, so whatever.
Whatever.
We watched it.
Yeah.
Did you? All right, raise your hand if you watched it last night. Just you two. Okay,
All right. Well, that checks
Check
out.
the scores a couple times.
I watched the highlights this morning, but that was about it.
I mean, Justin gets a pass. He was in
Yeah.
Philly watching that spectacular kickoff at the end, or PK at the end.
That was bizarre.
The memes
was
on
really
Reddit
bizarre.
about Nashville are fantastic today.
For those who
Yeah,
don't know, missed every single free kick at the very end of the game.
Yeah, it was real enjoyable.
I don't think I've ever seen a penalty shootout that was 2-0. Like that's bad all
Weird.
around. But
It
like
was real weird.
really bad to not score one.
Well, like the first two were saved, which is really impressive. There was a lot going on. Yeah, it was. I can't even imagine being there. I think I would have been very angry.
If you also don't know, the third PK taker for Philly was 16-year-old Jack McGlynn, who was a Steel, was a Bethlehem Steel player and all of that kind of stuff. But he has made it to the Union roster and now is showing up in big moments.
Good for him.
Playing in a stadium with lights now. How cool is
Yeah,
that?
exactly. So cool.
Talking about, showed up on the big stage. So we have a couple of things we're just going to run through real quick, and then we're going to get to the typical, season recap nonsense that we run through. So a couple of things, and I think we're going to dive into probably most of these more in depth in the coming weeks because we got a lot of stuff to talk about this offseason. First off, big news, the Hounds will be in a video game. It's now official. It came out a week or two ago. It is not, it's not FIFA. It's not by EA Sports. It's Konami's eFootball franchise. I went back and watched like a demo video about it today to see what this is. Steve, you said you've actually played it. Is this game legit?
Oh, absolutely. So in the US, it's Pro Evolution Soccer. In Europe, it's Winning 11. And my understanding is, at least historically, like it was the bigger franchise. But I will fight anyone that tells me that Pro Evo Soccer on the Nintendo Wii was not the greatest soccer game ever created. Like, that's when I played it. It was fantastic. There was not a lot of licensing back then. Like, it was like the North London Blues to be Chelsea, right? It was like Drogba instead of Drogba. Like, it was like, I mean, it was rough all around, but it was like, it's on the Wii, so you're using the Wii remote to like drag players and like do different runs and whatnot. It was fantastic. It was a ton of fun. Hey, the Hounds are in it, but it's not on Wii anymore, so I probably won't play.
And my understanding is this version of the game, they're rebranding it with the esports tag, and it's going to be essentially free to play, from my understanding. So it's going to be a little bit different. So, I mean, at that point, free to play game with the Hounds in it, that's kind of cool. So I'm going to give it a shot.
How is that? Wait, hold on. How is that going to work? Free to play? Is it like web based?
I mean, probably not. It's probably just going to be a downloadable game, or like, it's going to be a game that you have to download. You can't buy a physical copy, probably.
Gotcha.
I mean,
Well,
according to Games Radar, the title eFootball 2020 to review a disastrous start to the post-Pez era. So, 1.5. Sorry, Steve, but and, they have Ronaldo on like the front cover, and it looks about as like good as Ronaldo's statue that went around.
The quality of the game was terrible, but it was the ability to use the Wiimote to like drag players on different runs and do dummy runs. Like, it was so much fun.
We'll see how it goes.
Whatever. I mean, it's still cool. Period. Like, I think that this is. I will never play it. I don't play these types of games because I am awful at video games. I do the grindy stuff in Animal Crossing. Like, give me a fishing rod, do it for days. But I think this is really cool and super fun. I don't know, it's an option. You could, manage the Hounds. Pit yourself against Lily. Let's see how we do. It's cool.
I did have a moment, and we will move on here in a second. I did have a moment where I saw like all of the local news stations covered it. Like, it was like a big deal. Like, the Hounds are going to be in a video game. And I'm like, Steelers are in a video game. The Pirates are, like, all the other teams are in a video game. So, like, yes, we've come a long way, but the fact that we're not even in FIFA, like, is making news. Like, I mean, it's news. It's good news, but
As long
we
as
still
they're
got a little ways
mentioning
to
it
go.
and not as negative as you are, I think it's a win.
Moving on.
Listen, every community is like, oh, we're in USL, we're not in MLS. Oh, we're blah blah blah, and not on FIFA. Good gravy, people! Shouldn't you be glad you have soccer and you can play it? I'm trying to clean up my language.
Okay, I'm a little confused by good gravy.
Good gravy.
All right.
Good gravy.
There's your Liz.
Wait, is this a family-friendly episode too? I have questions.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
we'll stick with
Yes.
good gravy.
Keep it friendly.
You should be glad you have soccer to watch and play on video games.
In other news,
This is the balance we needed in this show. Yeah, this is good.
In other news, Orange County won the USL Championship last night, beating Tampa 3-1 at Al Lang Stadium. I think, if you had asked the majority of people watching that game before last night, all the money was on Tampa. So to lose 3-1 at home in the way that they did, Tampa got a PK early on that was then saved, and just mental errors left and right, and just Orange County took it to them. So kudos to them. But
there's this thing of playing out of the back that USL teams probably just shouldn't be doing. Nobody in this league is Barcelona, so don't play that way.
Yep.
Speaking of Barcelona, the more important news
I was
to come
gonna say,
out.
is there a follow up to that?
Continue.
I think you mean PSG.
PSG is just like a money saving retirement option. But anyway, Messi won his 7th Ballon d'Or today, which was quite lovely. The picture, I should have sent it to you, Mike. We could have shared it with our viewers, listeners. The picture of Messi and his wife and their 3 sons showing up, like their sons were in matching like tux jackets that were like gold and sparkly. It was like the coolest thing. But all that to say, good riddance to Tampa, frankly.
It was fun to watch.
Connect, but that's fine.
It was fun to see Tampa. Like, okay, I don't have anything against Tampa, actually. I don't really care that much about the team itself, but it was interesting to see them at home. Huge, but great atmosphere. Like, it looked really cool. It was actually funny because I went from watching the MLS game to the final, the US final, and it was interesting to see the different, like the atmospheres were pretty on par. I would even say the atmosphere felt louder and bigger at Tampa's game, as far as like just the way it was looking on TV. So who knows if it's just the way they mic'd it up or whatever. But yeah, I feel for the fans though. Like it sucks to be like, at home watching your team in the playoffs and just seeing them getting thrashed like that, because it was like nothing was going right for them.
Yeah.
I want to comment. It's really hard to care about Tampa when we just watch the Hounds handily make them look foolish multiple times this season. So I agree with Josh. I don't care about Tampa.
Don't forget about that first game we played of the season with against Tampa, and we lost.
First game of the season doesn't count.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that, the game last night, you look at going into the playoffs, and I'm sure we'll dive into this ad nauseum later, maybe not in this show, but in a future one, where you look at how far Tampa went. And late in the season, we sort of handedly took it to Tampa, and you just sort of consider what could have been had it not been for, the whole COVID situation. But we will not regret. We will move on. I guess 3 more quick things, and we'll actually get into the round robin questions here. So first off, there was a press conference with Lily the week after it was announced that the Hounds would not be participating in the playoffs. Steve and I were both there. There were a number of great questions that were asked. I think the most interesting one was our buddy Mark asked the question of Coach Lilly if he's been approached about coaching an MLS team, because his pedigree in USL is so strong, and there's a number of open spots or potentially open spots in the MLS. And Lilly said no, and he is 100% focused on the team heading into this offseason, which he also mentioned that the offseason's a lot shorter this year. And, especially with everything with the COVID stuff, they weren't able to wrap up the season as quickly as they normally would have. So he hadn't even talked to the team yet by that point because everyone was still quarantining. They still had another week before they could meet with the players, and then they had to make decisions. And now they're basically prepping for next year already. So it sounded like by the end of November was when they had to have all of the contracts locked up for any options that they were going to pick up. And so we should be hearing about players soonish, hopefully. We'll see about whose options were picked up. But we very quickly went from like season being over to like we're into next season mode, which is great. So that happened.
Yeah, I want to comment on that as well. Like with that press conference with Bob, and especially that question from Mark, I really appreciated Bob's style of response. He had a chip on his shoulder. He's like, no, I'm not looking to move on. I'm here. I've got something to prove. I want to win it all in Pittsburgh. And that was a really cool thing to see. Like he was just like, Bob is invested and he's going to be here, I think, until he realizes he can't win a championship or he does win that championship, which I think is a great thing that I really appreciate about how he responded, not just to the specifics of Mark's question, but the things surrounding that as well.
Yeah.
Can we stop putting that in the atmosphere as far as reporters and bloggers? Like, stop asking if Bob's going to leave, because I don't want that to happen. So it would be nice if you stop manifesting that and like just keep that to yourself. Don't ask that question anymore. Don't bring up the idea. I don't want anyone to get any ideas from these questions. Bob's fine. He's doing great. He has a nice office.
Bob Lilly is a terrible coach. Don't look at him.
I will say one thing that Bob sort of reiterated, like leaning into Steve's comment about the chip on his shoulder. He's very cognizant of the fact that he's been with a lot of teams, both sort of USL, and I think there was some MLS early on. Maybe I'm wrong there, where shortly after he's left, the team that he had put together, the players that were still behind, went on to win championships. And so he still feels like he had a part in building those teams and he just sort of left too early. So it almost feels like he may not be interested in leaving too early this time, that he really thinks he can build a team and stick it out, and then he doesn't want to leave and then see Pittsburgh win without him here. So he's very cognizant of his repertoire and how he wants to continue building things here, which is, good for fans. So that happened. The USL Championship announced their all league team. Kenny was the only Hound to get voted in. He made it to the second team. So there's that. And
I guess a quick question: Does anyone know like how those teams get assembled? Is it player voting? Is it people from like the USL office or managers voting or whatever?
Dartboard.
I'm pretty sure it's just the front office. The front office just kind of deciding, because like Cicerone in the top 7 goal scorers this season, Dixon in the top 5 for assists this season. No call out at all in the first or second team because they do have both. In fact, I think he made the second team, actually. Kenny did. Like, it wasn't even the first team.
It wasn't first team, yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit crap.
I'm sure it was in the article, Kevin. I just didn't read it. I just looked at the big old graphic they had. And I was like, Kenny, second team.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I don't remember it being in the article. I think what's impressive, though, is how often Kenny Forbes has done that and how he's done it. He's been in a USL all-team or all-league team as a Hound every season that he's been a Hound, which has been fun to watch.
That is impressive,
for sure.
I don't think Kenny's been our best player this season. I don't think
we're just gonna push that aside for right now because I feel like we could do a whole episode on that. The last bit, which again we're just gonna push to the side, but there were multiple outlets that came out today, essentially confirming some of the rumors that we heard earlier this season that the USL is seriously considering switching to a fall to spring schedule as opposed to a spring to fall schedule. Now, how seriously you may take some of these outlets, who knows? But the fact that it's come out and it's sort of strongly alluded to the fact that the USL is going to do this. It doesn't say when, but it says it's going to happen, is an interesting topic of conversation. So do with that what you will, but that's sort of all of the news that's come out really since the last time we got together to try to break things down for you guys. On to the season recap, shall we? So
All right.
I put together, like every year, a list of just sort of questions or players that you're going to miss or whatever it may be. And then we just sort of go around the horn and we share our thoughts on just on the question, what happened this season. And some of the stuff we'll talk about heading into 2022. So we're going to start with, I was going to say an easy one, but I actually found it to be a lot less easy than I thought it was going to be. Favorite moment of 2021. It was obviously a bit of a crazy year, but especially with the way that it ended. But there were a lot of positives to take away from it. So, Laura Ellen, you are, at least the way I see it, you are directly to the viewers' right. I don't know. Anyway, why don't you start, Laura Ellen? What was your favorite moment of this past year?
I think this season for me also was really hard to think of a favorite moment. 2021 has been a very changing year for our household and family, and so unfortunately the Riverhounds were not able to take the seat of priority that they normally do in our lives. That said, we were able to attend a game. I could not tell you who we played. I could not tell you who won, but it was really just like really lovely to be in Highmark Stadium again, for the final time before we moved out of the area. It was just really lovely, and it was a beautiful, hot day, as happens in the summer. And so, yeah, it was good. It was kind of like a nice way that we were able to get there before moving and just like be there and be in that atmosphere. And I can't wait to get back, hopefully in the coming season.
So back in Highmark, I like it. Steve, you're next around the horn on my screen.
Okay, well, so I know you're going to talk about beating Tampa, Mike. So
don't give away my secrets. Look at you.
Well, only because
you can talk about it. That's fine.
That was like that. I mean, it clearly was for me. So I reached a little deeper. And I mean, how do you not love a 5-0 win? The Hounds drubbing Loudoun at home. I mean, it's just fun to be in the stadium. I'd say that was the first time in a long, long time that I felt like the entire Paul Childs stand was just electric. I mean, 5 goals in a game. I don't care who it's against. We scored 5 goals. And, that's just fun. And the stadium environment was just lit up like crazy. And it was great to be in the stands that night. So that's kind of like my other one that was fantastic.
Awesome. That's a good one. I'm going to throw up here before we not like throw up. I'm going to put up on the screen. There we go. Matt Polanski said his favorite moment was being able to be back at Highmark without as many restrictions. So thanks, Matt, for sharing that. Justin, how about you?
Yeah, I'd say probably my real favorite moment was Dixon hit a couple rockets from really bad angles. And just anytime he would do that, like anytime he got into a bad angle, but with an open shot on net, I was like, this is probably going in. And several times it did. And good keeper saved most of those, but somehow he was able to slide a couple of those by. So that was probably my real one. I'd say my less the smaller one, but potentially bigger one was just the fact that Wyatt Borso hit the field a couple times and was on the roster. I think that you guys talked about it a little bit 2 weeks ago, but that's something we've been calling for a long, long time, is that there's a pathway from academy to pro team, and it happened this year. I think that's huge. Borso didn't play that much. He didn't really do all that much on the field, all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that Lily had enough trust in him to put him on the roster and stick him in a couple games, I think says something huge about what's happening at the academy level. And so, I love that for us long term. It's just, it didn't pay dividends this year, but I think that's okay.
Yeah. And actually, to that point, Steve, I think you were the one that asked Lily during that press conference about that very thing. And he mentioned that he was actually hoping to have more players come through that system, but because of COVID restrictions, they were basically in their bubble and they couldn't have some of the young players join the bubble to train with them. And so once we get to a point where the bubbles can be a bit more flexible, then the hope is that they do have some younger players that continue to move up and can penetrate the bubble and participate with the first team, which is exciting. I mean, to your point, Justin, like you said, we've been calling for that like forever. So that's great.
And I would hope as good as the girls teams are in the academy, like I would hope that might indicate in the future, or might give the Hounds hope that like maybe it's not the top women's league in the USL structure, but maybe it's the second division league, that there is that like pathway to like pro soccer for the women as well. And I think like that would be huge. And so I think it's nice to see, I think you guys talked about it last week, but I think like we look at Louisville and we go, hey, Louisville does all this and this is what we want to see and all this kind of stuff. And they have their women's team now. And so like, it'd be really cool if we could get to that point as well.
Agreed. 100%. Josh, how about you?
So I'm pretty sure it's the home opener. I mean, after a whole year, of having no one allowed in the stadium, and like season ticket holders got like one game, and that game was like spread out, hardly anyone there, and it just felt strange, and it wasn't the same as being at the Paul Child stand with all the fans with the flags and the smoke and everything like that. So that home opener, it feeling like a real game, it feeling like we were back. It felt that's right. It felt gravy good to be back.
Okay, sir. We'll talk about this later.
So yeah, it was just good. It was good, to feel like we were back. And granted, we were naive back then and thinking like we had crest the hill and we're on the way back to normal. But that besides that, it was nice to have that moment.
Liz?
So it was actually the fight that we had about Chick-fil-A. Because like for a number of reasons, and like it brought us closer to the Iron City front, which I think is a great thing, that we have two supporters groups and finding out how to work together, even though we have different main priorities, that we're both there for the team, that we're both there for a community. It really like solidified our ability to talk to each other, which I think is wonderful. And hopefully like we will have more groups who want to cheer and chant in their own way and who want to support in their own way. And it's not always going to be, the Steel Army is not always going to be your right fit. And I hope that everyone finds a home and that other people build things. It gave us like a strong, positive way to talk with the front office about something that was really difficult. And I think as the team matures and as the Steel Army matures, it's really important because other things are going to come up, other priorities are going to come up, and having that base and knowing that you can communicate with each other is incredibly important, so that we aren't at odds with each other when we disagree. So I think that was really important. And then it got a lot of people talking about the River Hounds in a really positive light, and about the Steel Army in a really positive light, that there was that communication, that the Steel Army is focused on a set of values and they live by those values. I didn't realize how many other teams had issues, how deep the issues went with some of their front offices, until this came up and it kept getting retweeted and it kept getting published. And then a lot of people approached me and said, hey, I heard about this in the news, because it made, of course, every news cycle here in Pittsburgh. And they were like, tell me more about the Steel Army. Tell me more about your values. Tell me more about what the game experience is like. And so I got to talk about the team and about the Steel Army a lot. So in the end, from a situation that could have been really terrible, there were a lot of positives that came out for me. And I think that it made our group a lot stronger. And so I think that's a big deal.
I think that's a fantastic one, and one that for whatever reason just I completely forgot about. But there were a number of cases this season where you could tell that, and it's somewhat kudos to the team as an organization for listening to what the fans feel is important. But there were a number of occasions, not as major as the Chick-fil-A one, but where we as fans sort of push back and we're like, well, hold up, like, what's going on here? And then the team actually sort of backtracked and responded in a way that was more fitting to what the fans were looking for. So that was a really, really good one. Kev, before you go, I'm going to put up on the screen, JF said that his favorite part was the first win at home being a season ticket holder. Holy cow. First one at home being a season ticket holder in the home game versus Red Bulls. So thanks, Jeff, for that.
What would a honer be? Is it a home?
A honer? A homeowner? Is that what
A
a
homeowner? A
honer?
honer. Yeah. I
A
like
honer?
So
that.
Steve,
Yes.
Steve's a honer.
Steve's a honer. Yeah.
congratulations.
I don't know if I feel good about this or not.
Kev, what's yours?
The moment that like kind of defined the season for me was the no goal replay of Miami. It's a very complicated feeling moment where it went from just like, yeah, like, are you kidding me? Kind of, how do you talk about this on a podcast? To then, being a great moment, to then getting the points we need, to feeling like it was the kickstart and the catalyst to going into the playoffs that we needed. Even though that kind of fell short in the last game, but that moment gave me a lot of feelings that I think will help define the season for me.
Is it a favorite moment though, or was it just a moment?
I mean, the entire
I guess I should have
it.
just understood that I asked the question and Kevin changed the question, so it's fine. That's just par for the course. It's good.
I genuinely think when you take it as a whole, yeah, it was my favorite moment because, those 6 seconds. No, it was terrible. And I wouldn't say that was my favorite, but like, how it ended, the drama that exists around it, the story that exists around it, the redemption that it offered, that's why I'm a fan. It's great.
I mean,
the corner. That's it. Let's get on with the game, I guess. So after all of that, we have a corner for Pittsburgh.
Exactly.
Like that's like one of the last times I'm gonna do that. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
I don't think Bob's comments were PG, Mike.
He did not say
I
great.
don't know what you're talking about. I couldn't hear anything there, Liz. I don't know.
Can I throw a secondary one? Like,
Sure.
Tuffy's tweets related to this incident were absolutely fantastic, even though they were cryptic at times. Like, Tuffy was on point with his tweets from the moment that happened until the replay was announced, and it was fantastic to watch.
It did result in the shortest watch party ever, which was a blast. We had it at Bulldog Pub, and it had a great turnout. It probably the best turnout we had for a watch party that year. And yeah, that just tells you something, how much it did mean to everyone and like how crazy it was. And again, it got the Riverhounds press, and it got us, mentioned by a lot of bigger names in soccer, even though a lot of them were angry that they decided to play the game again from that moment. But shout out to Taylor Twellman, I guess, for standing on a soapbox and yelling about it for a while.
I wonder if you talk to people, 5 years down the road, do people remember the Hounds more for that or Romeo?
It's probably still Romeo.
Like, what's the like memory that people have of like Hounds on ESPN? Was it Miami or?
I mean, more people understand the Romeo incident, and so more people will remember that. Like having to explain and figure out what happened with the whatever own goal, like that was hard to
roll the clip.
People aren't going to remember it.
Jimmy, yeah.
I think a lot of that depends on when their team that they follow in the USL came into the league.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I think like people that are in the league now are going to remember this, but if they weren't around for the Romeo incident, they're not going to remember. Like, that doesn't stick out to them.
I think my favorite point sort of pales in comparison. I think you guys all did a great job. I just picked the 2-0 win late or mid-October against Tampa at home. That to me was a game where going into it, I felt like I don't know, like what do we actually got here? And the team showed up, and we had a Duba dive in the penalty box, which then Vidiello saved. Like it felt like that was our stamp. Like here we go, we're gonna go on this run, and it's gonna be amazing. And then, it didn't, play out that way. But in that moment, it was just like, okay, like this team is going to do it. It's going to be great. So, so that's my moment. Next up, I'm going to combine the next two questions because, shocker, we're going to run out of time here. So the next two questions, and we're going to go then in reverse order. So, Kev, you'll be up first. player you'd be really disappointed to see leave, and the player most likely to leave. So last year, just to sort of set the table for this, we all know that there's going to be players that leave. The Hounds are somewhat notorious for not necessarily picking up, I don't want to say not picking up options, but they typically always sign players to 1-year deals with an option. And then after that, they're with the Hounds for 2-ish years, and then they're gone. And really, the only players that have been here all 4 seasons that Lily has been here are Kenny Forbes and Jordan Dover. That's it. We just, we run through players pretty quickly. So last year, I remember there were a lot of people who said, like, Tommy V, we want to see him leave, or Ryan James, we want to see him leave. And so unfortunately, they did both leave. So Kev, coming to you first, while I'm trying to ignore the chatter in chat, player that you'd be really disappointed to see leave and player most likely to leave, and they could be the same person.
I'll start off with the obvious. The obvious for me, Cicerone would be the person I would hate to see leave the most. I think, especially at this level, it's hard to find guaranteed goals, and if Cicerone hangs around, I'd feel very confident putting money and high conviction money on him scoring more than 12 goals next season, and I think that's worth its weight in gold in the USL. What player most likely to leave? I feel like I can cheat and just say like Josh Gatt or something, but like no, I'll pick someone from
the starting 11.
Yeah. I don't know. That's really difficult. I don't think Cicerone's going to leave. I don't think Dixon's going to leave. It's hard to say because I feel like a lot of the players that came in and made an impact were kind of first year players. And so we have that option for them to extend. And so I don't see like Todd Wharton comes to mind, but I feel like he's done enough where we'll likely probably pick up the option on someone like a Todd Wharton. So I don't know. I think that's really up in the air. I don't remember the timeline of when Jordan Dover signed contracts, but it feels like he might be one. I wouldn't want to see him go, but he might be a likely exit in a similar vein, like a Ryan James or something from last year.
I feel like you're dragging this out and you still didn't say the name you wanted to say, but that's fine. Liz, I'm going to jump to you.
Okay, so player I'd be really disappointed to see leave. I am admitting defeat on this question on all counts. I never know. I'm going to trust in the Bob Lilly system. Last year, we kept 7 players. I think this year I would have said, if we can keep 9 players, that'd be great. But I don't know enough, and so I would just name starters, and that's not how you build a good team. So I obviously don't know anything. Of the 7 players last year, 4 of those had been here for at least 2 years. And 3 seasons without moving on is because of family money, the USL is very, volatile. I think that's great. So in the end, I'll trust the Bob Lilly system, but whoever he keeps, I will at least half of them, this to be their, 3rd year. That's my goal. So I'm just going to trust the Bob Lilly system. I have no idea. But I think the player most likely to leave is Kilwine. It didn't really feel like he firmly played in position. I don't know if it's because Lilly really expects you to be flexible, or if Kilwine just didn't really enjoy where he was being played. But I also felt like he had so much potential, and he was on this cusp of doing something really great. And so this may be a situation where the system just didn't let him shine, and there are other places that he could go and shine. And so I think he's the most likely to leave and actually really succeed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had really high hopes for Kilwine, and there wasn't anything that I saw that made me think that he didn't perform. It just, for whatever reason, he wasn't in Lily's starting 11 a lot of games. And so I think it's a good shout. Josh, what do you got?
Yeah, as far as people I want to see stay, I'm going to pull Kevin and give you 2 names because it's more of a 2-0. I want to see Cicerone and Dixon stay. I feel like we have a strong offense this season, and I don't want to see it get rebuilt again and us have to start all over again. If we can keep that core there and then, be able to build it back to get our defense back up to where it was in years past, we'll have an unstoppable team. But as far as person I'm thinking most likely to go, it's probably going to be one of them. But it could also be. This is who I thought Kevin was going to say, Forbes. The reason I'm saying Forbes.
Honestly, I almost did. Yeah.
The reason
That's
I'm saying
not who
Forbes.
that's not who I thought you guys were going to say. So go ahead. Let's hear the reason why.
I mean, he might retire. Like, it might be that time for Forbes, and I would hate to see that happen. I don't want him to retire. I think he's still good, but honestly, it's to the point now where I could see him retiring this offseason. I don't want him to, but that's kind of my sneaking suspicion. So
that's oof, yeah. Justin, what do you got, man?
How do I follow that up? I don't even know. Sorry, guys. I mean, there's a lot of players that I'd be kind of disappointed to see leave. I think I will kind of go with Liz of like every year I feel like I'm like, Lily, why are you getting rid of this person? And then we do fine in the season, and it's like we replace. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I get frustrated every year, but it's like that's just the nature of USL and maybe the Hound situation more than anything. I mean, so the player I'd obviously be disappointed to leave is Danny Griffin. I think he's been really strong, and I think he's been good, and I mean, he's young and fun to watch, and so I'd be sad to see him leave. And I think the other thing he's done for the team over the last year anyway is allow Forbes to play up higher, which is where I think he's better. So, it'd be frustrating to see Forbes have to drop deeper in the midfield and that sort of thing. He's probably, I don't know. So that would be a player. I think another player that I'd be sad to see just because I think he has a bigger upside than what we saw this season is Edgar Armstrong. I thought he was really good coming in late in games. I thought he ran the wing really well. Plays the system really well, and so I'd like to see him be around for another year and see what he can do. Not necessarily do I think he'll be the best player ever, but I think he's a player who's on the come up and that sort of thing. The player that I don't think that Lily is going to bring back or wouldn't understand why he would bring back is Shane Wheat. I'll leave it at that.
That was the one I thought was on the tip of Kevin's tongue, and then I was expecting Josh to say. And it made four people before it came out, but okay.
Shane Wheat will be back, much to my dismay. There's no way with the amount of time that Shane Wheat played this season at center back when there were other center back options that Bob Lilly does not pick up that option. I don't want to see him back. He's going to be back.
I weirdly think Lily likes Shane Veit, and I think he thinks
Lily's, yeah.
I think he thinks Veit has a higher growth potential. I think he thinks Veit could. I mean, Justin, you said this is the USL. Stop trying to play out from the back. I think Lily thinks Veit could be the key to that. I think he thinks that Veit could be the ball playing center back in a three defensive system. But yeah,
I agree with you. I think he sees Veit as Tommy V 2.0, and but that's not what he is. And so I don't understand it.
Yet, Justin, that's not what he is yet. He needs another system with Bob, obviously.
Sure.
I think we said it mid-season. I wouldn't mind seeing Veit playing like a holding midfielder destroyer type position because I think he has the height and he could do that as long as he has the coverage behind him. I just don't. Not to knock the guy. I'm sure he's a great guy, but yeah.
Do you want him to get 2 yellows a game and red card out of every game? I'm not sure that's where we want him playing.
Maybe.
No.
Team Chaos, man.
Yeah. Oof. Steve, how about you?
There are 2 players that I think are definitively likely to leave. Williamson, who I don't want to see leave, but will because he was alone, but was somebody that added so much to the attack. And then Dikwa, who I had such high hopes for coming into this season, and then just was not what I had hoped to see. So I'll lump them in as striker, not named Cicerone or Dixon, if Dixon was even a striker for most of the season. And then if I look at especially the last month, 2 months of the season, the guys that Bob Lilly was relying on. You look at that and you look at who had options and who didn't. And the players that didn't have options, Danny Vitiello, Danny Griffin, and Kenny Forbes in the starting 11 most times, and then throw in a Jordan Dover as another guy that Bob has relied on historically, but maybe wasn't in that mix as much because of his injury. Pick any of those four, and I'm really disappointed to see them leave, but I think we're going to see more than one of them leave. Josh really wrecked my entire offseason when he said Kenny may retire. And if Kenny leaves because he retires and it's Kenny's choice to retire, then Kenny, great to see you on the field for 4 years with the Hounds. Loved watching it. Best of luck. Stay in Pittsburgh. You're an asset to this community. If it is because Bob Lilly doesn't want to re-sign him for some reason, then it's the absolutely wrong decision, right? Like Kenny Forbes needs to retire as a Riverhound. If that's this year or next year or 5 years from now, pull a Silva and retire at 37 and I'll be happy, right? But I think for me, it is definitively, to get to the answer, Jordan Dover. One of my favorite Riverhound players, always great to chat with after games, chat with in DMs on Twitter or wherever. He's just such a great guy, and to see his season not come to fruition this year and this be the season that he doesn't come back, that would really sting for me.
Yeah.
Just a humble brag, just DMing Jordan Dover, you do.
Great guy to meet for coffee and have over for dinner.
No. I've been telling
our dogs for walks together.
Buns for over a year, and I haven't done it. So until I do that, I don't think I'm real friends with Jordan Dover.
Oh man, Laura Allen.
Yeah, so I think what's been so hard and about this year and about this season and this team is that I feel like I just don't have an emotional connection, right? In 2019, we were able to go onto the field and talk to the players, and we had that wonderful preseason kit reveal, and I guess we had that in 2020, right? But there just wasn't. I just feel like there wasn't that connection with the players in a way that I wanted to personally see them. And certainly, you're all talking about play on the field. And admittedly, I wasn't as diligent in my watching of the Riverhounds quite this season. I had some other priorities that had to take place. But someone said on a previous show, and I was trying to remember who it was, so one of you can claim this, is that it would just be great to see the whole team just come back, just because I feel like there is such kind of this idea of unfinished business, or, you talk about Lilly having a chip on his shoulder, but just allowing this team to really reach their full potential. And of course, I don't think we'll see that because that's not how Lilly or the USL works. But that would be I don't know. I feel like that would be really cool. Or what was it? The 2020 USL championship that was postponed to the first game of the year, or replayed, or whatever it was, right? That would be great. But of course, right, we're not going to have the same squad. It's not the same thing. So, there's that. I think I don't know. I think Danny Griffin had a really, really excellent season, and I just see him wanting to make more money, and I see him, unless we have an option, which I don't think we do. But I can see him wanting to kind of make more money and go somewhere else. And I feel like a lot of our players have done that, whether it's been because of Pittsburgh or family reasons or financial reasons. I can kind of see Danny, saying, okay, I want to try to make it somewhere else and see what else can happen. And, I can't really fault them. I don't know, we can have a whole episode about this, but thinking about the salary agreement that the players union made, when you look at those base salaries, it's oh my God, if this is actually them collectively negotiating and then this is what they're asking for, I just can't even imagine what they were getting before. So that was a very long-winded way of saying I wouldn't be surprised. And I think Danny is probably one of the players who will probably make an exit.
Yeah, Danny was.
What about you, Mike?
As I say, Danny was my guy for player I'd hate to see leave, especially under the circumstances. So I think, first of all, Laura Ellen, you were saying, I don't know if he has an option. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. This was his option year, which means that if he was to stay, then we would basically be signing him to a new contract. And I think that he's another player similar to Robbie Mertz, where it's if you're going to go and you go to MLS, like best wishes, go, do what you're going to do. But if it's the case that, he ends up playing in Birmingham or Hartford because they're willing to offer him more money, like that's not cool. Like we need to get out of this cycle of just losing players because other teams are willing to pay them more money, which it sounded like that was the case with, some of the players like Manky Azil and Ryan James when talking to Lily earlier this season. He wanted to keep those guys, but they left for whatever other reasons. When we lost Joe Greenspan, it sounded like it was family reasons. He moved all the way across the country. And Steve, I think you're right. I think it's money. So if we lose Danny Griffin to one of those teams for money, we know he has family in the Hartford area. It would be terrible to see him go play for Hartford and have to face him a couple times next year. But he's the one that I would hate to see leave. And the one that I think that might go is Vidiello. And that's another one that I would hate to see leave, but that's a case where Lily has a tendency of Vidiello will be up on contract. He just takes anybody and turns them into a Golden Glove. So let Vidiello go make more money somewhere else and we'll bring in somebody else and make them a Golden Glove. So if I was putting money on somebody to leave, personally, I don't think, we've had Danny on a couple of times, both Danny's on. And I don't know if he necessarily wants to leave. You see him in all the stuff, the offseason, the food drives, handing out food. I think he would love to be here, but whether or not we consider him to be expendable and bring in somebody else that Lily will just make a new Golden Glove keeper. That's sort of where it's at. So,
and we could get
honestly,
into that topic a lot. Oh, go ahead, Laurel.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm not a Vidiello fan. As a goalkeeper, I think he had an excellent season, and I think he I also think he got extraordinarily lucky in many instances when he would come out with his swagger or whatever. I don't know. It just it hit me the wrong way. I'm gonna be real honest, but if Lily can seemingly make Golden Glove keepers out of average keepers, then and I don't think you were saying this, Mike, but then do we care if it's Vidiello or some other keeper, right? I don't know. If Lily trusts the guy to be in the net, then at this point I'm okay, fine. You've demonstrated to us time and time again that you can seemingly create these keepers out of nowhere. Not to say creating them out of nothing, because they definitely are putting in the hard work and putting in the time. But I don't know. If he wants to go, that's fine. I'd rather save my money and, keep Griffin, frankly.
And the crazy part about that keeper conversation is he's not creating system keepers who do really well for us and do really poor everywhere else. He's creating Kyle Morton. He's creating Austin Pack. These guys are starting other places in the league and doing really well. And so it is crazy that he's not creating we had a lot of conversations around Lily for the last couple of years of oh, he's got a good defense, so the keepers probably aren't that good. They just get away with a lot because they have a good defense in front of them. Vidiello kind of proved that not to be true this year and was in the top 5 for the Golden Glove most of the year and all of that. And then same thing, I think every other keeper who has been there has now gone on to do bigger and better things post-Hound. So I think that just shows what he's creating.
But the system is important.
Yeah, for sure.
It's huge because you look at a guy like Kyle Morton got injured in 2018 and Dan Lunt stepped up. And where is Dan Lunt? He retired after that season, right? He was a top tier keeper or his stats were top tier for a keeper in the USL in 2018. And then he wasn't in the league after that. And then you see Kyle Morton be a player that was had he not started that last game in 2019, he would have been the Golden Glove winner. Danny Vidiello was the Golden Glove winner last season, top 5 this season, right? You look at that and where's Kyle Morton now? He's on a reserve team in an MLS team, right? So he's playing backup at a higher level. Bob knows how to find keepers. As Danny Vidiello Love the guy, love his attitude. One of my favorite episodes of the pod was when he was on. Just listening to him talk was just great last offseason. He's a cool, genuine guy. His off-field presence, I can't replace that in the persona, right? Like, we might get another great persona, but his on-field presence, I think Bob Lilly can find those guys. And as much as I don't want to see him leave because I like Danny Vitiello, I'm not worried about a Danny Vitiello leaving in terms of what it does to the position of keeper.
Yeah, agreed. We have two more questions here. I'm actually going to skip over one of them, and we're just going to go positive instead. The one question was going to be, where do you want to see us improve in the offseason? And it feels like a lot of people were leaning towards get better defensively. One stat that I thought was interesting, just as I was digging stuff up, and we don't have to talk too much about this, but I think that a lot of this season, we talked about how offensively potent we were as a team and how it seemed like, we weren't relying on one guy. Goals were coming left and right. And when you look back from 2021 to 2018, basically 4 seasons under Lilly, this season actually had the second lowest number of goals per game, goals per minute out of any Hounds team that we've had. Which I think is very interesting because I would have just assumed that to be higher. Now, in terms of goals conceded, this was the lowest season out of the 4 as well. We started at 0.8, then 0.9, then 0.8 per game. And this season we were at 1.1 goals conceded per game. So obviously we want to clean up the defense a little bit, but we have had more goal scoring offenses in the past as well. So chalk that up to whatever it may be. But
I mean, sorry, Mike. I appreciate so much that you put this together, and you putting this together makes it so much easier for us to have these very critical conversations. What I will say about the 2020 season is that it's a complete anomaly. So I feel like it's so many things were different about, who we were playing, how often we played them, the number of games that we played, and anyway, it just if we throw that out, right, 2021 is about average for the number of goals that we have. It's right in the middle of 2018 and 2019. And then we conceded more goals per game, but not that many. I wouldn't say it's statistically significantly different, just eyeballing it. But
I forgot that we had our statisticians on the show with us this week, so I should have just sat back.
I mean, no, this is really great. I really appreciate it. We could do some nice graphing of this, although it'd be great to have more. Anyway, this is fine.
I feel like the kid who brought home a painting and gave it to their mom. Look what I did. You're like, oh, that's nice, honey. We'll put that on the fridge.
We'll put this in a folder, but not on the fridge.
No, I didn't mean it like that.
I know you did.
Putting this together. I just had to point it out.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you pointing it out. But that sort of segues to, and Laura Ellen, we'll start with you here. What are you most looking forward heading into 2022? We've talked about a lot of topics that I think we're going to spend a lot of time this offseason covering. Kevin, I know you still have your does delaying a throw-in mean the exact same thing as, trying to fake a penalty? We'll talk
Kevin
about
talking?
that.
It sounded just like Kevin talking.
I did it, right? Yeah.
That was...
But let's for a moment just sort of look ahead. 2022, it's literally probably 4-ish months away, and we're going to be talking preseason games and get ready for the season to start. So what are you most looking forward to in 2022?
I am so excited. We are going to coordinate. I mean, I'm speaking this into existence, just like you were saying, Josh, right? We are going to coordinate, and we're going to have a Mongols live at the Rubber Hounds where all of us can be together. Kev, you're going to drive up in your fancy little car, and we're going to drive in our less fancy car, and we're just all going to hang out and be together, and it's going to be super great. I also am excited for us to have the debate. I am also interested in this conversation, Kevin, and so I think we can have a really robust conversation that hopefully will be really interesting. because I have very strong opinions. I also think we should talk about like delay and goal kicks. Like, is that the same, right? When you pull up the shin guards, when you like do the things, right? So many thoughts. But all that to say, for 2022, I'm so excited for the Mongols crew to get together and be at a Riverhounds game.
Agreed. That makes me think that like we should get organized and actually like plan out these shows in advance with the topics, and like we can even ask Patreon followers like, who wants to sit and talk about this? Like, do you have strong feelings? And we could just have a whole panel and just go through it, which could be a lot of fun. I like it. Steve.
So I'm going to give a shout out to Soccer Better, because Laura Ellen's answer seemed very soccer better. And if you don't listen to Soccer Better, you should go listen to Soccer Better, because it's our own Liz and Laura Ellen talking about how to soccer better. Yeah, that just made me think of that. What am I most looking forward to? I was trying to think of a really good answer, and I don't have a really good answer. I don't know. I think one of the things I've really missed is the opportunity to talk and think deeply about Riverhounds formally. Last year, this year, we're both really weird. I mean, Justin, Laura, Ellen moving, me working towards proposing my dissertation, made this year really difficult to think about doing a preview show. So I don't know what Justin's plans are for next year. I'm hoping he wants to do the preview show again. I'm hoping we can find a way to do it a little differently and have a lot more fun with it. But I think just kind of that type of thing where we get to talk about soccer and do something a little different in terms of what does it look like to talk about what we're thinking about with the upcoming games for the Riverhounds, whether that's once a week, once a month, or whatever, I don't know. But that's something I've missed and something I'm looking forward to going forward, is getting back into that. Justin, it's your turn.
I was going to say, Justin, are you looking forward to talking to Steve as much as he's looking forward to talking to you?
Well,
I don't need Justin to be here. I just want to talk about it.
Steve's going to record monologues next year before the games.
It's
Hey, here's
That
what's
sounds like
happening.
a lot more fun than what you've done previously.
I mean, I don't have anything. I don't really have a great answer to this question. I think it's hard to know what I'm looking forward to until like I see a 2022 roster, and it's like, okay, Hounds are getting 20 players on their roster, and now I can figure out what I'm excited about based on who got re-signed and everything else. I will say, I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to in 2022 is like, and this is going to sound pretty cliche, but I think just the continued growth of the USL. And I feel like I feel like the league is figuring it out, right? And like getting there and getting places, and they're being creative and they're being fun. And like, yeah, there's still the USL and we can still talk about them and they're still terrible at times. But like, even the fact that they did replay the game, but then thinking about next year, I think there's, Detroit City, there's probably less two teams. There's, like, it feels like the league is gaining an identity the way maybe the NASL and other leagues have had an identity previously. And so I feel like with the women's league and the changes in the league, I'm just looking forward to next year. I think it's going to be fun, and it's going to show continued growth in the way that they've been growing for the past couple of years. And even the fact that the championship game was on ESPN last night and like it wasn't on some sub network, so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. It's more focusing on the local aspect of that growth that we're seeing. So this year we had Vic, the president of the Riverhounds, come in, and he made a lot of changes. And he had like this tailgate zone thing where they had food trucks every game, and merch outside. They set up more points of sales within the stadium. And it was just kind of like, I felt like it was scratching the surface of what changes we could be seeing for the stadium itself and the way the Hounds run themselves during game day and outside of game day. So that's exciting to see. But then also on the Steel Army side, this is the biggest we've been ever. We had the most members we've ever had. We had a lot of money saved up now because of that. So we're going to be making a lot of purchases and doing some stuff during the off season. Yeah, I mean that's where it comes down to. We have money now to do things that we want to do. And speaking of, Detroit, that's the closest away trip we could have now. So it's very possible that maybe we'll get a bus again where we can actually, do an away trip or at least a caravan type of situation. So like the possibilities for next season are pretty huge as far as growth. So just looking forward to that growth.
Plus the next season, Josh, maybe you'll have Queensboro. Maybe.
We'll
see.
I am thrilled about Detroit coming into the league. I've got a buddy that when he lived in Pennsylvania, came to a couple of Riverhounds games. We had some great memories. He's in the Detroit area. Like, I'm looking forward to him coming here and going out there. Like, that's a huge grab for the Hounds and for the league. It's a quality organization. It's great to see them come.
I always forget that Detroit's like 4 hours away. Like, I'm always like, oh, it's Detroit. It's like 3 days away. And it's like, no, it's actually really close. So, yeah, it's a good call. Liz, how about you?
I'm also going to manifest things into being. So someone close to me is going to have garage space that they're just going to let me use so that I can get a Steel Army utility van and watch out tailgate. I have plans. I'm willing to buy the truck, but I want a free parking space. So I need a garage, guys, because there'll be stuff in the van, It's like, anyway, so that's what we're going to manifest into being is the Steel Army tailgate utility van. Josh is real excited. Can you tell? He's so happy.
What was it? There was a few years ago. Wasn't somebody selling like an old ambulance on eBay or something like that? And we were like, how awesome would that be?
Right? Yeah. It would be cool. Yeah. Something like that.
It would be cool.
It's nice to want things.
The ambulance ends up being a little bit big and then it's hard to park. But a lot of the utility vehicles, like they have all the outdoor compartments, then you have the easy slots inside because the bigger ones, like the mini buses and the ambulances, people have like made seating areas inside. No one's going to sit inside of this vehicle. I needed to transport all the stuff I need.
Good save.
Good save. That was a really good save.
This gravy.
I was going to say, Liz brings a lot of gravy to the tailgate.
A lot of gravy. And it's going to be a tailgate.
Oh, that's definitely something to look forward to next year. Kev?
I mean, yeah, a lot. I second a lot of what's already been said. Detroit City FC. Maybe Kenny will design a new kit. That'll be cool.
There we go.
And I feel like I say for the past 2 years running, I'm still excited to see what happens with the training facilities. And I think Tuffy has been tweeting out some photos of progress that's being made there. But yeah, I mean, in the similar theme from what everyone said, I think, in the absence of roster movements or big managerial shifts or any kind of, salary spending increases or whatever, all you can hope for is kind of, growth around the club in a lot of different ways, whether that's, local support, through growth of the Steel Army or attendance or stadium expansions or, marketing changes or, for me, I think the training facilities could be a big step in that way. And it seems like it's progressing. So I'm excited to see that kind of fully up and operational next season.
Cool. I think what I'm most looking forward to is I think the continued evolution of Bob Lilly. I think when he first came in, we were sort of cautioned, like, don't call him a defensive coach, but he very much felt like a defensive coach. And this year when he rolled out his, whatever it was, 3-6-1, or, whatever the formation was to just try to get as many guys forward as he could, I think that was something that a lot of teams hadn't seen and weren't really prepared for. And so he's clearly identified that the defense needs work. I mean, he said as much on that in the press conference that we were at. So to sort of see how he continues to push himself and therefore pushes the team further and what that ultimately means for us as an organization. Because, I mean, let's be honest. Not that I think anybody thought when he stepped in that things were going to turn around immediately. It kind of did, because we went from being really excited about barely missing the playoffs to like really disappointed if we're not in the top two each year. So that's fantastic. But obviously this team still has a hurdle to get over. And it feels like Lilly is heavily invested in getting past that. He doesn't want to see somebody else come in and cross that hurdle that isn't him. So how he ultimately pushes himself in the offseason. And, it sounded like immediately after the season ended, they didn't even get a chance to see the guys yet. And they were already planning for the next year. They haven't even wrapped up yet. And they were like trying to figure out how are we going to adapt and get better next year. So I think that's what I'm most looking forward to. In addition to everything else that you guys just said, I think that us moving to something like this Restream platform opens up a lot of opportunities for different things, a lot more like round table live conversations like this. In the past, we've had players on in the off season. We talked about how fun it would be to have multiple players on at the same time and like pit them against each other in different ways, which could be fun. So I think I'm really looking forward to, seeing who does come back, and so that we can all, go to one extreme and go, that's crazy. Why aren't they bringing so-and-so back? And then seeing who we bring in, and then we sort of like level back out in the middle a little bit and cross our fingers. But, I think, as always, it's going to be an exciting offseason, and I think next year is going to be fun. You can always chalk up to the fact that we'll at least be making the playoffs, and it's just how dominant are we going to be beyond that. And
why do you tempt the fates with phrases like that? You just throw this out all willy-nilly and ask the gods to smite you.
I just, I love swimming in gravy, Liz.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'd love to set myself up that way, and that's just how I live my life. So yeah, that's what I think. So that's what we think. Obviously, let us know what you think. Guys, anything else that you have that you want to share? I'm hoping that we see all of you far more often this offseason, and we do a lot more of these like roundtable conversations, because this is fun. But anything else from you guys before we wrap things up here?
I'm just wondering what the proverbial mashed potatoes of this gravy analogy that we've been using is.
Ooh.
A lot of questions.
That feels like that's a whole like show in and of itself now.
We
Justin.
can talk food later. It'll be fine.
That's right.
We'll make it happen. We've got a whole off season.
I want to be clear. Polanski found the ambulance if we still want to revisit that.
It's too big. It's too big. It's not what I need.
Thanks, Polanski.
Yes. Thank you, Polanski. He just said loaded mashed potatoes. All right. I think that's it for this one. Thank you, everybody, for joining this. And thank you guys, obviously, for being part of this roundtable. Make sure you head over to mongols.com, click on support the show to become a Patreon follower. This is your weekly reminder, as always, that Black Lives Matter. I need to get my graphics up, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to do this. Thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier to USL, MLS, and UX Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Tired of the same old cookie cutter templates from Nike and Adidas? Looking for a completely custom kit for your youth club, Sunday league squad, adult, or even pro team? Icarus FC can help you create the kit of your dreams at an affordable price. Let them help you design your new custom kit today at IcarusFC.com. I've been seeing Icarus on some pro teams, which is kind of crazy, but that's awesome. Check them out, IcarusFC.com. Looking for more great USL news? Head over to bgn.fm, where we've now got over 100 fans and players that are writing and podcasting about the beautiful game. Lots of great features that went up on the site this week. Check them out at bgn.fm. Otherwise, thanks, everybody. We will talk to you very, very soon.
See you later.
Gravy.
Cheers.